How has your leadership style changed or evolved in your time at STV, or has it?
Well, it certainly has, and I'd be disappointed if it hadn't. I think leadership is a series of moments in time, and if you accumulate those moments the right way, you become a stronger leader. And I think part of that accumulation has to be an openness to recognize where you've got it wrong and admit that, and have a fair degree of humility, but also have the courage to move forward.
Welcome to Morrissey Goodale's Word on the Street podcast, where it's all things AE.
I'm Mark Goodale. He's Mick Morrissey. And you are watching Morrissey Goodale's Word on the Street podcast. Mick, how the heck are you?
Doing well, Mark. It's been I've been exploring new golf courses over the last couple of weeks or so.
Yeah?
Yeah. Exploring the rough,
the woods,
and the water.
Yeah.
Yes.
Outstanding.
Yes.
Outstanding. How's the swing been for you? What's challenging for you? Is it the short game?
So the swing is challenged in terms of the backswing, the downswing, and then the follow through. If I could get all of those three together, just one of them, I think we'd be in for a good season.
Well, you are an extraordinary golfer. I've played with you many times.
Yeah, three times. I think
it's the power off the tee. It's the medium game, the short game.
Yeah,
just
all of those things are missing. Yeah.
Well, we have a terrific guest with us in studio.
We do
today,
and indeed, for our viewers, we have a true Renaissance man. I think not only is this gentleman an avid open water swimmer. He's also, I think, one of the finest Phillies fans, maybe part-time Yankee fans. I don't know how you feel about that, Mark.
I feel partially bad about the second half.
About both of them?
Yeah. Well, the first one's okay. Yeah.
We'll also, this gentleman headed up the strategic planning effort for ACEC that created the ACEC Research Institute, which really has been remarkable in advancing the industry and advancing knowledge on markets and systems and processes and best practices for the engineering consulting industry.
And who is this?
This gentleman is?
He is Greg Kelly, the CEO of STV, a leading EA and CM firm with more than 60 offices across North America, currently occupying number 34 on the ENR Top 500 list and approaching $1 billion.
$1 billion in revenue. It's a remarkable achievement. Yeah.
So, Greg Kelly, welcome to the street. It's nice to see you.
Nice to see you all, and happy to be here. And, Mark, I was listening to you talk to Mick about the best part of his game, and I've played with him once. Mm-hmm. And what I would say is the best part of Mick's game is his company out there.
Yes.
He's really good company on the golf course. It's a pleasure to spend around the golf event.
I was caddying for Greg at the time.
Yes.
So
well, as Greg says, he's played with you once. It sounds like once was enough.
I was waiting for an invite for the next year, but that didn't come. No.
Now we wanted to start off, Greg, and we appreciate you being an avid reader of Word on the Street, and I understand you've read an article that you'd like to talk about that focused on letting go. I think you're referencing an article from last August that was called "Sometimes You Just Need to Let Go." What resonated with you, Greg, about that article?
I was hoping you wouldn't ask me about that article because I'm not sure I actually understood what was in there, what you guys wrote.
We get that a lot.
Yeah.
It's just words.
So
we're going to do graphics.
That'll help.
Forward,
Maybe some pop-ups.
Perfect. A picture book would be great. No, I think I think what you all do for the industry, and I'm not talking specifically at the podcast, but the strategic advice you provide to firms like ourselves is really very useful to the service. And I know we've benefited by a relationship with Morrissey Goodale, but I think writ large across the AE space, I think this is a really good service that you all provide. And I just wanted to start with that moment of gratitude. But
appreciate that. Thank you.
Your weekly Word on the Street is a must read that we circulate amongst our leadership team. And in that particular article, it was really about when to step back and when to get involved. And I think that really helps leaders and emerging leaders find that place. And each situation is bespoke. But I thought the article just really resonated. It was one of those ones, I think I sent you a note on, Mick, saying, well done. and circulate amongst our leadership team.
Well, it's interesting, Greg. It's as you know, being a leader, the folks in this industry, they build up and value their knowledge and their network, and letting that go can be very scary. That's where all of their value is wrapped up, and a little bit of ego comes with that too. I have to serve this client. I wish I didn't have to, but I have to. And, getting out of the way is part of that job. But there's a difference between, as you mentioned, delegation and abdication. Just turning a blind eye and leaving, that doesn't work either. So it is that little bit of a ballet that goes on.
Yeah. And I think you have to look at, when there's a wide experience gap, that's perhaps when you step up.
Right.
And then when you also, you think they can solve it on their own, it's an opportunity to step back and you can see real leadership emerge.
Yeah. How long have you been CEO of STV now?
I'd like to say I'm in my 5th year.
Okay.
Well, it'll be 5 years in this October.
I've heard you speak to your team. I've heard you speak to groups of folks. In conversations with you, I've heard you speak about the importance of relationships and how relationships are a glue, even though the roles of folks on the team may change over time. Looking back on the last 5 years, how has your leadership style changed or evolved in your time at STV, or has it?
Well, it certainly has, and I'd be disappointed if it had. I think leadership is a series of moments in time, and if you accumulate those moments the right way, you become a stronger leader. And I think part of that accumulation has to be an openness to recognize where you've got it wrong and admit that, and have a fair degree of humility, but also have the courage to move forward. So I think over 5 years, I've certainly evolved a bit more. And you asked how I've changed.
Yeah. Or how your leadership style has changed.
Yeah. I think it's probably gotten a little bit more nuanced, leadership style. And there's no one style. I worked for a great CEO one time in a previous life. And as leaders, we think you've got to meet this standard. And he had a great expression. He was a West Point grad, served the country well. And he said, it's not about your benchmark. It's what's required for the moment. And I think in leadership roles, you realize you've got a team, you've got some things to get accomplished, and you try to motivate the team and direct the team to what's required to meet that moment.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably one of my greatest learnings in the last 5 years.
So Greg, in your 5th year, STV it's a complex organization. Would you agree?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's the hard part? What's the hardest part of running this organization? And what don't people see about the work that you do? It's invisible, but it's important.
Yeah. When I say it's not complex, we try to simplify things in terms of how we operate. But your question is a really important one for any leader. And it's what is not seen. I think what's not seen is how in a leadership role, when you're tasked with making those decisions, the times when you make those decisions with incomplete information. You don't always have everything you need to make a decision, but moments arise. Mick, you and I were talking earlier about that, where you say, I've gathered enough information. I don't know how this is going to turn out, but this is the decision I'm making. Usually when we communicate decisions to the broader organization, 3,000 plus people, it looks like everything's well thought out and coherent and lined up. And boy, they really got their stuff together. But the reality is often you make those decisions and you don't know the outcome, but it's your role to make that decision.
Yeah. Well, the future is unknowable. And I would guess that the vast majority of the time you don't have complete information. And when you're leading a firm, you know this as well as anybody in the industry. Your business your folks get paid to be right. There are life and safety consequences to the work that you do. But when you're leading a firm and managing and leading people, it's all trial and error, really. That's how all cognitive learning works.
Right.
And you can't be afraid to be wrong. It's not the bed bug of intellect, but it's how we learn to get things right eventually. You can't be afraid to do that. You've got to be able to experiment as a leader, I would think.
I want to talk a little bit about growth and strategy. When you look at the architecture, engineering, and environmental consulting industry, most successful firms are focused on growth for all the right reasons, creating opportunities for employees, increasing value, better serving clients, serving more clients. Part of that is analyzing either new markets to get into or markets to exit. Do you have a test for what markets you're going to enter, or a test for markets you might exit?
Again, really important question for any leader to be thinking about in our space. I mean, the first test is there a path to winning? That we can be successful in that particular market or geography or new service offering that may be coming. But just as important, does that winning matter in 5 years?
Right.
It's today there's could be something very hot, but in 5 years, does it matter?
Yeah.
And the last piece, and I guess these are kind of the three foundational pillars, is do we have that internal champion that's going to own it? Somebody has to own this, that personal sense of accountability. Like, I've got this, we're going to make this work. And that's usually the final litmus test.
And does that person need to be on board now, Greg, or can she be, part of the future of the firm?
Could be. It's situational.
Yeah.
But doesn't have to be here now. Ideally, yes, because they understand the strategy and why we're moving in that direction. But it's that high degree of personal commitment to have that initiative succeed is really what we look for.
What about consciously exiting markets?
Yeah, we've done that at STV. There were some markets that felt subscale and we didn't feel like we could win. And we thought there's a better home for those employees. So we made that decision. I guess it was probably in my second year.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we said, look, and we found a great home for those employees. And they're thriving in that new home. So for us, we're constantly evaluating what stays, what goes.
So I want to relate that back to leadership if I can. So Mark and I have done quite a bit of strategy work where we are working with our clients. We identify markets to enter. We identify markets to get out of. And you can put a test together and it ticks the boxes of we don't have a leader, not going to be there in 5 years.
No passion.
Passion for it. Doesn't really serve us.
Right.
We're going to exit that. Easy on paper, but then you got to talk to the stakeholders. You got to talk to folks who've been with you in the firm for, 10, 15 years, whatever it might be. As a leader, how do you translate that executive corporate level decision into the lives and work of the employees who are in that sector? Because you don't want to make them feel unwanted, right? But it's a business decision.
And there's a knock-on impact to that
Yes.
too, because others will look and say, whoa, what's going on here? These are my friends. These are colleagues. We've grown up together in the business.
Right. Yeah.
So you stratify it. And we spent a lot of time talking about who had the longest, deepest relationships with people. And it wasn't necessarily by a spot on the org chart, but it was more, based on those deep, long-standing relationships with each other, and to communicate, why we're doing this. And it's no reflection on the technical quality, no reflection on their contribution over the years, but it was really more about finding the right home for them.
Yeah.
But it was a carefully choreographed set of conversations over several weeks,
Right.
to bring people along.
But at the foundation of those conversations has been direct and been honest and been truthful. And
Right.
This
we
is
don't sugarcoat it
Yeah.
and try to gloss over it and say, oh, this is all happy stuff. This is a business
this is
decision.
business stuff.
But let's look at why this is good and can be very good for everybody.
Yeah.
And to keep from throwing good money after bad, you talked about winning. You've got to define what that looks like. Is it going to be a winner in 5 years and so forth? I would think that you have to define what not winning looks like as well, so you can get to those honest decisions without dragging it out year after year after year. Do you think about that deliberately going in?
Absolutely. We go through an annual process every year. We call it our BPO, or Business Planning Overview, and where we look at all the markets we're in, the services we provide, and the geographies we're in. And we'll ask that question: what's happening here? Are we competitive? What's the future look like? And we'll make certain decisions on where we're going to allocate resources and time to try and win in those markets.
Who owns that process at STV?
Yeah, we have a chief development officer
I
that
see.
owns that.
Yeah. Very good. Yeah.
And he's done a great job advancing that. And this is our third year. I think we just completed our third year of doing that. And it's really been a good process, because it's that moment. We do it at the halfway point in the fiscal year.
Yeah.
And it's that moment where you step back and say, all right, are we going in the right direction? How does this align with our strategy? We'll test the strategy as well. But it's those honest conversations we're looking to have.
Yeah.
So, Greg, your firm has made multiple acquisitions. What's the most important thing you may have learned the hard way?
Well, if I can go back to my pre-STV days,
Please do.
it was undervaluing the cultural integration. I remember one particular acquisition we did, and it was in a service and in markets that we had no understanding of anywhere in the firm. And for us, it was a geographic play to get into a particular area of North America. It was it was a really bad move.
Yeah.
And it was a second generation owned company. There was just a lack of ability to communicate in terms of priorities, strategy. We failed to do the right amount of diligence on that one.
What were some of the red flags that you saw kind of popping up and you thought, I wish we had caught that in due diligence or even prior?
Yeah, I think this is what I call deal love at that time. And it's something I've brought forward to STV, that we try to avoid that. But to me, it was an inability to communicate about how you serve clients and how you make money. It was just a total misalignment. It got so bad, our chief M&A guy at the time offered to sell the company back. That was not well received.
Yeah.
I was not objecting, but it was, it just kind of worked out for the wrong. But I think it's really marked that cultural integration. You really have to spend time on that up front.
Yeah. It sounds fluffy, but
Oh, no.
as usual, the soft stuff is the hard stuff when it comes to interactions and deals.
So you have employee ownership as a capital model. You've got ESOPs, right, as a capitalization model. You've got publicly traded firms, so always about between, 19 and 21 publicly traded firms in our industry. You have private equity or financial sponsored firm, have a capitalization model. You've led firms with all of those capitalization models. Can you comment on, and we're seeing different trends in the industry with respect to capitalization, some changing capitalization models. Can you speak to those different models and if one's better or not? I think that's probably a little bit black and white, but if one's better or not, are there better times for a firm to adapt a different model?
You're absolutely right. This industry looks so much different than it did just 10 years ago in terms of the numbers of players in there. Of course, the employee-owned model is great for that deep-seated commitment to the firm and its values, but it's a little bit constraining from a capital perspective to grow. The publicly traded firms give you the resources to grow and execute on strategy, but it has some shorter-term pressures for performance that may get in the way. And of course, private equity, I'll say, broadly, if there is a kind of middle of fairway private equity, gives you perhaps the resources and the discipline, but also has maybe different time horizons on your strategy. So I think what we're saying here is there's three different, pluses with each and maybe some drawbacks. So it's not about, is there a right or wrong? I don't think it's about ideology. It's about where are you in your life cycle as a firm? What is your strategy? And what are you trying to execute on? We're a bit of a hybrid at STV.
Yeah, explain that, please. Yeah.
We're so if you want deep commitment to a firm, and there's the positive. You want the resources to grow, as you have in the public company, and you want the discipline, the financial discipline to perform. We have that in our ownership, which is it's a family office, so it's what we call patient capital. So unlike if there is a traditional private equity, we're not working towards an exit date or an exit multiple.
Right.
What we're working towards is the strategy. So our M&A, as an example, at STV, is in support of the strategy. So we don't have that conversation of, okay, we got a 5-year plan, and we think we can do it sooner than that, and that's good for private equity, but it's discipline into the business. We're doing all three. We're building off that deep commitment to STV and our values. We have the resources to do some M&A, Mark, as you alluded to earlier. And we're doing it in a way that we can do it thinking long term, because the work we do is generational. Just like a family office thinks in generations.
Yeah.
The work we do around infrastructure and the 3 verticals we're in, transportation, social infrastructure, and water, these are generational investments. Because we're working, we're living, experiencing today what those that came before us conceived, planned, designed, and built. Yeah. We're doing that for future generations. And that doesn't work on a 3-year cycle or even a 5-year cycle.
Do you envision yourselves as stewards almost in a way of those assets?
Absolutely. Yeah. That and that goes back to the deep relationships we build with our clients. And it's we're not like vendors, that do what they're told. We're more like partners. We work with clients and say, we help them even define the problem that they're trying to solve. I would say to the young engineers, it's not about the bridge. The bridge is a mobility solution to an economic development challenge.
Yeah.
Connecting communities.
So that's a nice segue into talking about clients. But before we get there, I understood most of what Greg talked about there, but he used a phrase. That I'm not familiar with. He said middle of the fairway. What was he referring to? Is that what is the middle of the fairway? Because I've never been there.
It seems like a mythical place to me. It sounds made up.
Yes.
Frankly.
Yeah. Do they have them? Are they
I've heard about
common areas?
I've heard about it.
Okay.
But I haven't seen it.
I will Google that.
Yes.
I will use the
Good
AI
luck.
enhanced Google as well, because that's the only way I'll find the middle of the fairway.
Well, to your point about Segway and all this, we talk about growth and M&A and internal messaging. None of it would be possible. None of it would be needed without our clients and what they value. And so when you look at your best clients, and I guess best is the ones that challenge you the most, respect what you do, pay for what you do, and so forth. How are their expectations changing? What did it look like 5 years ago versus today? Has there been that much change in what they're looking for from a firm like yours?
We think so. And we think the change is it's still about on-time delivery and technically very good work. But clients are changing as well. And what they're looking for more now is somebody to help them evaluate risk, to define the problem before they can articulate it themselves. So it's genuinely a deep partnership that we're seeing really is what clients value right now, not just the transactional nature of what we do. So it goes back to, what we're trying to do is build those capabilities in the firm. That's how you get to differentiate. You don't differentiate by winning the project, differentiate by having the capabilities that can help the client think along those lines.
Yeah, risk is I'm hearing that more and more from our clients, that is becoming prioritized by their clients. And as I understand it, there are a couple of dimensions to risk. One is how likely is the risk, and then how much impact will that risk have on you? What's the impact of the possible outcome? And there's not much you can do about the impact, but there is maybe to some degree, but there's more in the likelihood. So if the likelihood is low, you try to keep it there. If the likelihood is high, you try to move it down. But I find that people confuse risk with outcome. Like the risk is losing $500 million. No, that's the outcome. The risk is not being able to staff it properly or what have you. Could you give us a little insight onto how STV looks at risk and how you help your clients manage it, put it off, stockpile for it, whatever the things you can do with risk?
Sure. I'll cut that in two frames. How we evaluate risk in bidding on a job. And I'm leaving this and reviewing a bid with one of our teams internally. And then the other piece is how we're working with our clients to evaluate risk around projects. That'd be helpful. For us internally, we always look at what's our execution plan? Do you have the right resources? Do you have the right execution plan? What's new here? What's the relationship with the client? What's their ability to pay? And you see this more and more around design build projects where the relationships are a little bit different. They tend to be a little bit transactional. So we take a cold, hard look at that. We develop the right plan to execute on the risk, and we'll also develop the right strategy around managing it, if you will. As it relates to the clients are really looking at the risks of delivering, on many of our projects, these big programs. And, what are the risks? Are they political? Are they engineering? Is it market driven? It's certainly in the past 3 years, we have a lot more clients saying, what's the bidding climate out there? Will we have enough bidders? Is this project too big? Too big. Oftentimes we'll help them with the strategy, how to package it and procure it, because there's new procurement methods that are out there. So we have some really good experts that can help clients think through that right now.
I do know one thing for sure. If you go into thinking about risk in a mood of hope, you're going to be cleaning up a mess. So you better be deliberate about it.
Yeah. Are clients asking you to do different things now than they were 5 years ago?
In some cases, yes. But I would say overall, Mick, no. But what I would say is the different requests could be in terms of what risk we would take on, in terms of like how the contract is structured, some performance risk in certain cases. And I think we as an industry have to get a little bit more comfortable with that, because the model is going to change.
Yeah.
Where for the most part, we're talking about public infrastructure now. The business model is going to get turned on its head from a cost reimbursable to something else. Lump sum might be that bridge.
Yeah.
But then how do you begin to value your services?
Yeah.
And I think you've written about this. We better get moving on that. So we're more open to that right now in terms of how we might contract. But Mark, to your earlier point, hope is not the best approach, and getting comfortable having uncomfortable conversations early on and having the discipline to say either this is too unreasonable or we don't have the capability or ability to do this is a really important conversation to have and move on to the next opportunity.
Hope is great, but in that context, it's the raw material of losers. So you really don't want to be stuck there. But, when you get into these relationships, business relationships with your clients, they're very close. I got to say they've got to be somewhat complex, but what makes those relationships go from healthy to rock solid, which is really what you need if you're getting into that kind of thinking with them?
Well, time. This is, again, you're building capabilities, you're spending time with your clients, and we've got whole client service team program at STV. We've identified capstone clients, which are the top 20 to 25. And then we've got core clients, which represent the next 50 or so. And we've got client service team leaders that's their job, is to make sure that relationship is healthy with that client. So we spend a lot of time on it. This just doesn't happen. You're not responding to RFPs, but you've arrived in that rock solid category when the client calls you before they call their own internal team to think through a problem.
Yeah.
And that's really what we strive for.
Yeah. Or another company. I love when I hear from clients, they call us when they really need it right and everybody else is screwed up, and then they really have to get it right. They come to us and forget that. I want right of first screw up, come to us first we want to be the first call. And that speaks to what you build in-house, I think,
Right.
like with folks, and the leadership that you're developing. And, we talk about, values and culture and all that, but what's your litmus test for identifying future leaders inside your firm? What's the DNA that you look for, and do they have to come with that, or do you develop it, or is it a blend?
Yeah. I'm not sure how you would technically define it, but EQ, IQ is one thing. EQ is more important. There's been a lot written on that.
Yeah.
And it's people that will inspire, that people want to work with is really what we look for. Hard work is a given, but passion for what you do helps. But do they have the ability to read situations, read people? And it's like a great coach that you were a college baseball player. Those great coaches connected with you and knew at the right moment what to say to you. That's what you look for, that emotional maturity that can lead people.
They knew the right thing to say, like, give me the ball, you've had enough. Head to the bench.
Yeah. So on that topic, just kind of pulling the string on that. How important then is it, do you think, that folks are in the office together to be able to capture that type of coaching or capture that type of empathy? And I'm assuming that it's easier if I'm looking at you and talking with you to be able to be direct and honest in the moment. Is that a correct assumption, do you think? And if so, how important is being together? Because so many firms, particularly in the Northeast and the Midwest and the West Coast, have favored more of a hybrid, if not more of a remote model than maybe firms in other parts of the country. Can you comment on that?
I agree with your assumption. And how do you evaluate people for future leadership if you don't have a pre-existing relationship with them?
Yeah.
So we know each other and you're remote. We've got a connection relationship. We understand each other. I can see what, I understand what you're doing. I see what you're doing. When it's a new relationship, I don't know how you do that. Somebody looks good on a podcast, we should promote them to leadership.
Nobody looks good in a podcast.
Yeah.
Except for us.
Yeah.
But it's really about, you got to be in person, some amount of the time, and to see people in difficult situations. Leaders emerge in difficult situations. You're testing. I mean, you're not testing, you're giving them opportunities, and it's a test for them to see how they rise to the moment. And I don't know how you do that when you're not in person.
Yeah. For me, it's a real challenge when I look at the industry as we've moved to the hybrid model, because there's so much that makes sense about the hybrid model. And there's nothing in the results that would suggest, we got to stop having a hybrid model, right? The results, the financial performance would suggest that it works. But then when you look at the soft tissue of leadership development, and as Mark has asked the question, how do we, what do we look for future leaders? It seems to me that younger engineers, scientists, and architects want to come into the office. Middle managers, folks in their 30, maybe 40s or 50s, 40s here, of course, Mark, maybe don't want to come into the office. I think you need those folks in the office. And when they're in the office, they're not on the phone. They're not doing Teams calls. They need to intentionally helping folks develop and really engaging with them. That's the primary reason, I believe, for those senior managers to be in the office. And that's tough for them because they're still billable and they still need to be doing work.
But isn't that a short-term perspective about the financial results would indicate it's working? And leadership is built up over time. It's those series of those moments that add up that create your leaders.
Yeah.
And if we're giving those moments away for convenience, I think we're creating a leadership gap or maybe even a chasm that we won't know about for a few years.
Yeah. When will we know about it?
We're in this generational phase right now. There's 5 generations in the workforce.
Yeah.
as these generations move out, that's when we're going to realize where we've got the gaps, and where they tested it and they were able to learn and observe from those that came before them, those kinds of lessons, because leadership takes time. I don't believe that people are born leaders. You've got to work at it. It's got to be intentional.
You know, this remote and in office, we tend to look at the good old days like good old days. And I can remember consulting with firms and talking about how do you develop leaders when remote work wasn't even a thing, and we still couldn't get them out from behind their own seats.
Yeah.
So to be emailing each other. So I think the firms that are good at, that are on top of leadership development, they do it well in both environments, as long as they're deliberate about it. And there certainly are advantages to folks being together, I think.
Yeah.
No question about it. But it's, what do you do when you get them together? Greg, let's shift a little bit here to these folks producing the kinds of things we need them to produce, leaders and the folks who are actually closest to the work. Innovation. What does innovation mean to STV beyond the buzzwords that we always?
Right. Difficult to put a pin in innovation, but what we would say is that innovation is recognizing everything's kind of a system out there, and you make incremental improvements to the system that allow you to be better than everybody else. So whether it's around how you build client relationships, how you evaluate an M&A pipeline, how you structure efficiency and delivery in big programs, that's where innovation occurs. So it's little pieces along the way. You form these different petri dishes, throughout your organization to innovate. It's not usually that big idea. It's rarely that big idea that right. You would define as innovation.
Right. And I got to think that AI and technology is changing that equation a little bit, or at least how it's produced. Is it helping? Is it hurting? Is it having any impact at all on, quote, innovation in STV?
Oh, I think it's helping tremendously. And, we challenge ourselves to deploy, the AI capabilities, in various corporate use groups, on projects. It's happening quicker than I think I would have said a year ago.
Yeah.
And I think that horizon's just gotten a lot closer. So what was an over and under of, 3 to 5 years, I think is now 18 months to 3 years in terms of dramatic change.
You're on your own personal AI journey. You're using it in how you work and how you communicate and how you get stuff done to free up time in your day, right?
Absolutely. It's freeing up brain space.
Yeah.
To think more strategically, to go out and have more conversations. Well, we like to say, put yourself in traffic to find ways to help the organization grow, whether that's organic or inorganic, or visiting clients or meeting teams or recruiting leaders. AI can absolutely is making a difference, and we're spending a fair amount of time on it.
Can you give an example to our viewers and listeners of maybe one or two things that don't take you nearly as much time and thought that they used to because of AI?
Simply around research, getting research client, research market conditions, is just something it's in your hand. There's no reason not to do that.
Yeah. So let's move to your legacy and your vision. What's the one thing you hope people say about your time leading STV when you're on the beach, dipping your toes in the water, or on the golf course right down the middle of the fairway, and that
or swimming between Gibraltar and Morocco,
yes,
which I assume is on your agenda.
Yes, on his way back.
Yes,
after the first lap.
Yeah, it's a 9-miler right there.
Legacy about my time in STV. Well, that somebody used the term earlier, good stewards, and I like to think that I was a good steward and did the best we could while you were in the role, because these roles are temporal. And you did the best job you could, then you hand it off to the next person to do whatever that next evolution is going to be for STV. But I think they would look at the organization as somebody does what they say they're going to do. They lead with trust. They lead with competence. They're a good partner. and they're eternally optimistic that, we can see a better future, however that's defined.
2035, 10 years from now. My math is spot on yet again.
Without a calculator. I
One
want
thing
people to
that'll
know
be
that.
different about STV, one thing that'll definitely not be different about STV.
Well, I think we'll be a lot more enabled technology, but I think our core values and how we treat each other and how we treat our clients will not change. How we serve our clients will change, most definitely.
Mick, it's now time for your favorite feature.
It is, yeah.
And that is Word to the Wise.
Can
It's what
hardly
you
wait.
For. It's very difficult for you to wait, I understand. But we ask our guests for some wise words. So, Greg, what's one lesson about leadership that took you a long time to learn, but you'd want someone stepping into their first executive role to know right away? Youth is wasted on the young, as they say. What do you wish you could just get right into somebody's head right away as they step into that new leadership role that you worked so hard to earn?
Yeah. This may sound counterintuitive, but to slow down, be patient, take the time to understand the situation and move and before moving too quickly. And if I can add a second, it's all about the team you build. And that is tied to the first, know what you're looking for in a leader, and then trust them to do their job. Know when to step back and give them space. Hire really, really good people. I studied engineering as an undergrad. I studied physics. It wasn't my easiest course to get through, so I used to go for office hours a lot.
That's what I did too.
I don't remember a lot about light and refraction.
Yeah.
But here's what I do remember from my physics professor. He said, Greg, one time after a tutoring session, he said, one thing we do here in the physics department is when we hire somebody, we always look for somebody that brings something we don't have, because that makes us better. And that lesson has stuck with me as we think about leadership.
Well, that was not only a word to the wise, those were words to the wise. And I just want to go back to the first point you made. It's right on. Lots of leaders will spend precious little time on making the assessments and a lot of time on the decision itself. And those things should be reversed, right? For sure.
Thank you for those words to the wise, Greg.
Yeah.
Greg, thanks for joining us today as well. And thanks to our viewers. Please like and subscribe. And we hope to see you next time on the street.